One of the biggest challenges that Rebuild 3+1 has to face is filling the massive plot hole that the previous movie left behind, and that is the time skip that we experienced between the second and third movie. We know that Hideaki Anno wants to move away from the Evangelion franchise for a while after 3+1 is released later this month. Therefore, he and his studio are going to focus on other projects, which means that we are not going to have a new Evangelion story for some time, if at all, at least from Anno himself. After 3+1, the only major ongoing Evangelion story left will be Yamashita's light novels, Evangelion Anima, which in my opinion are great, but they take place in a whole different continuity, and you can feel the difference between Anno and Yamashita's storytelling, just like it was with Sadamoto's manga. So that means that Anno will have to satisfy a lot of fans with the final movie. Remember, there are still those in the fandom that hated Rebuild Q and expect some kind of retribution from the upcoming film. Many people have been holding to that idea for more than 7 years now. We have little to almost no information on the events that took place between the second and third movie, just some clues here and there. That is why it's so difficult to understand where the story is heading towards to. In this video I will try to unveil the most visible transition of events from the infamous time skip using the evidence that we have from the movies. Please bear in mind that many arguments which will appear in this video are only speculation and fan theories. Any of these can change when 3+1 is released, and finally we can get a concrete answer for many of those questions. So take every single piece of information in this video with a grain of salt. With that being said, let's begin. Let's start with the preview for what it was supposed to be the third movie and appear at the very end of the second movie. You cannot advance. Now, keep in mind that none of these scenes made it to Rebuild Q, and they're supposed to be sequences for a movie that was never made, or at least released. So let's go over them to get an idea of what it could have happened. The first image of the sequence shows Evangelion Unit 1 impaled with the Spear of Cautious, in the middle of a circle of angels sitting Hex pillars, which is supposed to mark the near third impact ground zero and a barrier that no one should enter. I already made a video regarding these pillars and what they supposed to do. Basically, they are used as some kind of a blockade for angels, and we have seen them especially in the second movie, although they also appeared on Rebuild Q. And the background narrator, who is Misato, is telling us that Shinji and Rei remain within the unit. Then we are unveiled that not only Tokyo 3 has been and remains destroyed by the near third impact, but also that the NERV personnel has been put under custody. Although we do not know if by the Japanese government authorities or perhaps the United Nations. Neither if it was only Tokyo 3 personnel only, or personnel from other branches of NERV around the world also suffered the same outcome. Nevertheless, the reason for such outcome seems obvious. They killed a bunch of people, with the awakening of Evangelion Unit 1, which is their responsibility. Then we have probably the most important part of this sequence, and that is Mark 6 descending to the Terminal Dogma. This is very important because we know that this happened, as we saw on Rebuild Q how Mark 6 was petrified with Lilith on the climax of the film, but I will come back to this later on this video. Then we see what is supposed to be Evangelion Unit 8, as Misato tells us, but it seems really different from the unit that we are presented with on Rebuild Q. Notice how similar it is to Mark 6. Perhaps that is why the Evangelion Unit 8 official name in the third movie is Unit 8 Alpha, as it may be a modification or an upgrade from the previous Evangelion unit. Something similar to what happened to Unit 2. Then we have Kaoru, who is soaking wet for some reason in a room facing 4 shadows. I remember the first time I watched this over 10 years ago, I was pretty sure that those shadows were Shinji, Asuka, Mari and Rei. as the narrator tells us that the children finally get together. This is no longer true, as it was confirmed by Khara that these 4 shadows belong to the 4 rays that we see in a later image. If this sustains in the final movie, then we can deduct how many rays actually are. Again, remember, none of these scenes made it to Rebuild Q, so the arguments are not canon, at least not yet. More on that in a minute. Then we cut to Misato struggling and Kaji pointing a gun. Every time I watch this particular take, I wonder, where the heck is this movie? I want to watch this movie. Then we see Gendo and Fuyutsuki on a journey with an ass. I have to say, I like the ass. Wonder if it has another meaning other than being a means of transportation. The ass may be the key of everything. Then, the 4 rays in front of a wall made up of the angel glyphs. So, this brings back the question on how many rays are. Well, officially we do not know, as we do not have the whole story yet. But if we take this shot as canon and we accept that there was 2 more rays before this, then there is at least 6 rays, which means that Ray Q should be either one of these rays or one that came after. Many people have speculated that Ray Q is actually Ray 6, one of these shadows. I expect this to be clarified in the upcoming movie. Nevertheless, if we take this storyboard from Rebuild's second movie, which is the definite proof that these shadows are actually Ray and not the other children, we can see how 3 of these rays are children between 6 and 10 years old, which seems the appropriate age of 3 of these rays shown in the image. Again, the argument might have changed as we never get to see any of these images on the third movie. Then we see Mary in the same room as the rays, and it seems that Mary is undressed. Asuka in her containment chamber after the Evangelion Unit 3 incident with the hex pillars around it, and finally the big reveal of Asuka wearing an eye patch. Now, Asuka eye patch did make it to Rebuild Q, but this particular take did not. This is how the preview ended. We knew at that time that the main storyline was going to be altered, but never expected Rebuild Q's actual story, which does not show any of these images. So yes, many were angry about that, as it was misleading. And to be frank, it seems a very cool story, even more interesting than the final product was. Perhaps I am saying this because I already watched Rebuild Q like several times for the last 7 years, and I want something different now, but I digress. Now let's start with the theories and speculations with the evidence that we have. The first thing that I want to address is Mark 6. We know this unit had a major role in this event, as we can see it petrified on the shoulders of Lilith in the third movie. We do not get to see how exactly happened though, so at some point after Mark 6 stops Evangelion Unit 1, it descends into the dogma probably to find Lilith. We know that the outcome of this encounter is what we are seeing on this image, both Mark 6 and Lilith impaled by 2 spears. Either Mark 6 impaled himself, or he was impaled, as we can also assume by that position. He could have been trying to take the spear off, but that we do not know. When Shinji asks Kaoru if that is an Eva, Kaoru says that is Mark 6 used by Lilims and modified for autonomous use. Therefore, if we take Kaoru's words letter by letter to be true, then he definitely was not the pilot that took Mark 6 to the dogma, because he's not a Lilim. Not only that, but also we know that the dummy plugs do exist already in the storyline, specifically named the DMYSYS, a Golotha-based product. And it was used on Unit 1 when Shinji resisted to fight Unit 3 with Asuka inside it. Therefore, it is possible that Mark 6 may descend into the dogma on pilot. Another theory that I mentioned on another video might be that Kaoru had a clone. as part of the fandom has speculated on that the Kaoru that we saw in Rebuild 2 is different from the Kaoru that we saw on Rebuild 3, and is a pillar on the loop theory, which I'm not gonna get into in this video. Now, the differences between the alleged Kaorus is explained by the fact that Rebuild's 2 Kaoru was the one carrying the Spear of Cautious. Therefore, how he does not know in Rebuild 3 what was of the outcome of the spear. He was pretty much certain to find the Spear of Cautious in the dogma with Lilith. So either the spear was replaced at some point, or was not him who was carrying it down to the dogma. But who will replace the spears if Kaoru himself says that it is required of 2 souls to extract them? That is the purpose of the dual pilot Evangelion Unit 13, which was not operative until that point. Also, there is the 12th angel in there. So experimenting on extracting the spear would have been extremely dangerous. Big plot hole here. Perfect. Another possibility might be that other Evangelion unit was the one that caused all this mess. As we know from their designation numbers from 0 to 13 that we are missing a few that we haven't seen. Evangelion Unit 7, 11, and 12. So let's see, we have Unit 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which exploded as in the original story. Then we have Mark 4, Unit 5, Mark 6, Unit 8, Mark 9, and Unit 13. Oh well, and 8 plus 2, that might be the 10. Many people in the fandom speculate that Toji finally got his chance to pilot one of the units, as Shinji finds out that the school uniform he's wearing, it was Toji's. Either that or one of the multiple rays that we have from the Ayanami series, which seems most feasible as Lilith does take Rei form. And there is no other explanation how this is possible other than Rei, who is a Jewish clone, therefore is similar to Jude, merges with Lily, who is a faceless god. We can also say that it was not Rei on one of the missing Evangelion units, but aboard of the Mark 6 itself, as we know that Rei is very much a Lilith. Oh, a spectacular plot hole. Mwah, beautiful. But we can also say that at some point Mark 6 was possessed by the 12th angel, and was the Mark 6 with the 12th angel decided that descended into the dogma seeking Lilith, and then another Evangelion unit was sent to stop it, which may explain why the angel within Mark 6 exists particularly there. Therefore, now they need to take the angel out to allow Mark 6 merge with Unit 13. Well done, Anno, spectacular, and a standing ovation for you, sir. We do not know how actually happened. What we do know is that Mark 6 ended up in the dogma, with an angel inside it, and maybe started a new impact. How it developed, however, is still a mystery. We know that at some point, Lilith awake and took Rei's form. We know that the Rei that we met in the first 2 movies was not the one who merged, as she was trapped within Unit 1. Therefore, in order for Lilith to adopt Rei's or Yui's form, it should have merged with one of the Reis at some point. In order for Lilith to regenerate from stasis, that means that someone needed to remove the Spear of Longinus that we saw on the first movie. Therefore, someone took the spear out and beheaded her, as we see her head in another place. In Rebuild Q, when Kaoru is explaining to Shinji what instrumentality purpose is, he finished by saying that the third impact actually occurred and that Shinji is responsible for it, which is obviously a plot hole. Not to mention a contradiction, because we have been told before that what we saw Shinji do at the end of the previous movie and Kaoru stopped was the mere third impact. So how can Shinji be responsible of the third impact if he was trapped within Unit 1 and he did not wake up until 14 years later? Well, my friends, fan theories happen. If we go and accept Kaoru's and part of the fandom arguments, that means that at some point Evangelion Unit 1 which Shinji and Rei sighted, went down into the dogma, carrying the spirit of Cautious, looking for Lilith. So it can be argued that Evangelion Unit 1 found Mark 6 possessed by the 12th angel, trying to make contact with Lilith, and was Evangelion Unit 1 who beheaded Lilith and then used both spears to put end to instrumentality and thus a very advanced third impact. Lilith beheading could explain the reason why the failures of Infinity are missing their heads. As I mentioned on my previous video, how the failures are in fact categorized by the official lore and scripts as Evangelion units, and they were adopted in the form of an Evangelion unit as a result of the union between one of them with Lilith. When Lilith got beheaded, probably all of the failures also lost their heads, and this could explain why we see all of the skulls that we see around Lilith on Rebuild Q. They are just the missing head of the failures. After such event, Nerve took Unit 1, sent it to space to keep it safe and away from the newly formed Wily, until a new EVA, capable to be the recipient of all of the Atom, is ready for a brand new impact. I don't know if that is exactly what happened, but I do believe that it took more than the near third impact to modify the planet, including the bizarre landscape of Tokyo 3. Only a full impact could have provoked such of an outcome. Either way, that is just my humble opinion. Many things happened between the second and third movie, and looking for clues in the preview at the end of the second movie has always been a fan obsession. I cannot assure that those events happened the way I explained on this video, neither I can explain everything that is going on in the preview, as that can only be explained by 3+1. Will be the upcoming film to be able to close this gap and give us a concrete and reasonable explanation of these events? That is one of the many challenges that the film will have to address. Guys, thank you all so much for watching. I am currently developing a set of videos regarding Rebuild of Evangelion. I publish Evangelion and other anime content on my channel each week. Make sure to subscribe and like the video if you did, and of course, as always, I wish you all a wonderful day.